Ciao everyone and welcome to the analysis of the second summer song we are going to analyze for this summer break 2026. I am talking about Al mio paese by Serena Brancale, who made a featuring with Levante and Delia. Now, of course, you will remember Serena Brancale from last year and this year as well, and Levante also because she was in this year Sanremo Music Festival. However, Delia is a little bit younger, but we mention her for one of the cover nights, well, actually two cover nights, because Delia sang with Serena Brancale and Levante during cover night, probably because they wanted to introduce this new song, which became very popular, not only for positive reasons, however, we're going to talk about it in a moment, and it was released a little bit after Sanremo Music Festival. So, let's start as usual from the translation of the title of the song, Al mio paese. We could say, and generally the translation of the song in English is in my hometown. However, this is a translation more related to the meaning, because literally in Italian we say al mio, like it is also implying a movement towards, so would be to my hometown. Paese could be town, small town, but as I said several times, paese can also be the country, and so I think it was this specific word was chosen on purpose. So generally, hometown would be paese natale, paese natio, whatever you want. Per se, paese doesn't mean hometown. It means little city, small town, and whatnot. However, the whole point of this song, as we're going to see in a moment, is exactly to come back from the place, from the town you are from, so your hometown. That's why it is usually translated in my hometown. And generally because al, so generally the simple preposition a, can mean towards something, towards someone, towards somewhere, but also somewhere, like statically speaking, so in a place. Also, another thing, Al mio paese comes from an album that we mentioned other times because it's the latest album by Serena Brancale, Sacro, so sacred, holy. But what about the meaning? So this time we were very lucky because there was a whole interview released to Il Fatto Quotidiano by Serena Brancale concerning generally the new album, but specifically several questions were asked concerning the specific song, because this is one of the core songs of the new album, so Al mio paese. I'm going to take the translation because this whole part of the interview explains a bit the whole purpose of the song. So, the interviewer first asked, what made you decide to launch Al mio paese with Levante and Delia from X Factor? Because, as I was mentioning, Delia is younger and specifically she came from X Factor. Her debut involved mainly X Factor. So, this interview was released by Serena Brancale because the song technically is hers. Levante and Delia are the featuring. And she answered, it was a risky move because I wanted to talk about folklore not by staying in my own home, but by visiting other people's home. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience because I'm discovering that Delia and Claudia is the name of Levante, are just like me. This is a reference to the fact that there are, probably, this is my guess, there are parts in dialect in the song. However, we discussed this other times, Serena Brancale is not from the same region of Delia and Levante, because Delia and Levante are from Sicily, so their dialect and the dialect we are finding in the song is Sicilian. On the other hand, Serena Brancale is from Apulia, so her dialect is pugliese. I don't know how the dialect is called in English, but you get it. Anyway, the dialect is spoken in Apulia, and in fact, she has songs, whole songs in that dialect. But this time, since her featuring is with two Sicilian women, the chosen dialect examples, mentions are in Sicilian. Then, next question. In what way? We miss, and then the answer, we miss the same things about the South because they all live mainly outside of the South. Like seeing a woman waving sheets out on the street, or when your parents tell you to go say hello to all the relatives because if you don't visit them, they'll get offended. And this is a literal reference to one of the lines in the song. It's lovely to see myself reflected in this take on folklore. Plus, there's Delia sharing her Sicilian story and Claudia talking about her grandmother who looks at her with smiling eyes, or all the references that we can find in the lyrics. Then, next question, why did you choose those two specifically? Answer, I've known Claudia forever. I've been a fan of her since Alfonso. Alfonso, note, is one of the first famous songs by Levante. As for Delia, I watched her grow before X Factor. I saw her searching for her own path, trying to blend classical music with pop and mixing Italian with other languages. Because let's remember that in Italian, or at least in Italy, dialects are not only accents. Dialects are real languages with different syntax, vocabulary, phonetics, grammar, anything like real different languages from Italian. And then she keeps saying, I want to work with women because Sacro, as I said the name of the album, in many ways is a record with a distinctly female perspective. I love sharing music with women who tell the story of their South in their own unique way. I left home to make my dream come true. And then, related to that, the last question is, so many young people leave the South for work. What is left in the region? Ultimately, like in the end, what's left from where you come from? And then the answer of Serena Brancale. Without being overly critical or constantly looking for what's wrong, I think there are some wonderful things happening in the South and everyone is doing their best to improve things. For me, Al mio paese is a celebration of all that. I mean, I live away from home and I'm open about how much I miss the South. There are also some fascinating local music scenes. Take Marco Castello from Syracuse, for instance, or my native Apulia, which has become a hub and a backdrop for so many Italian TV dramas. The Itria Valley has some stunning recording studios and the best music videos are made there. I am very much inclined to always see the good. Remember this part because we had several criticisms coming up concerning this song and we are going to see them a little bit in the lyrics. So, talking about the lyrics, let's check them. We start with an intro. Mi sento una gitana per la strada le notti in metropolitana. Mi manchi, ma domani torno a casa e finalmente sto con te. I feel like a gypsy on the street, nights on the subway. I miss you, but tomorrow I'm coming home and finally I'll be with you. Couple of notes here. The reference to be a gypsy means like not like feeling like a nomad, and this feeling is related to the subway because little note, in Italy we don't have as many subways due to how many archaeological sites we have. It's kind of hard to create subways in Italian cities, so keep this in mind. Chances are the subway Serena Brancale is talking about here is the one from Milan. And then we have these three lines. Mi manchi, ma domani torno a casa e finalmente sto con te. I miss you, I miss you, but tomorrow I'm coming home and finally I'll be with you, which is of course referred to generally the culture, the region, the people, so what coming home represents, and it is also the pre-chorus. And in fact, after the intro, we don't have the verse, we have the chorus. Incominciano le ferie quando torno al mio paese, le madonne nelle chiese quando torno al mio paese, con le luci sempre accese quando torno al mio paese. So, quando torno al mio paese, which is of course the main point of the song, also given the title, means when I return to my hometown. And what do I find when I return to my hometown? Because as you might have noticed, this is being repeated several times in the chorus. So, incominciano le ferie, the holidays begin. What else? Le madonne nelle chiese, the Madonnas, la Madonna, so the Virgin Mary, le madonne, plural as in the statues in the churches, and in fact the Madonnas in the churches. What else? The lights always on, with the lights always on, probably referring to all the festival happening and whatnot. And then we have the second part, le signore sulle sedie, the ladies on the chairs, tra le piazze sempre piene, amidst the ever-crowded squares, per l'amore e per la fede, for the love and for faith. And then, torni sempre al tuo paese, so not quando torno al mio paese, which was the part always repeated until here, but torni sempre al tuo paese. So for all those things, you always return to your hometown, and then it is repeated 2 times. So why am I saying this was criticized? Because you might say, oh, but Silvia, this is a very positive and nice image of Italy, is what I would expect visiting the South. Well, the issue is pretty much exactly this. So we already have a problem with the tourist and generally how mainly South Italy is depicted outside, but even inside Italy. So, and nothing bad about the South, there are full of positive things. Of course, we have a reference to the religion, because religion is much more important in the south and in the north outside of the big cities. So what is more countryside, less industrialized a place is in Italy, generally speaking, more the religion is important, okay? And then we have the lights always on, so like the party, the festival, and whatnot. Then we have the ladies on the chair, so this sense of community. We have this image of crowded squares. And then we have the love and the faith, okay? But there is a problem. I understand both points of view, because the point of view of Serena Brancale, Levante and Delia is we want to make a song celebrating the positive sides of the South, because we don't like the storytelling about the fact that the South is dead, the South is in critical condition. So for once we want to show the positive aspect. And don't get me wrong, I understand this will. However, objectively speaking, I also understand why the complaints, because I would understand the need of a song highlighting the positive aspect, so a positive point of view on the South, if this what was missing. But we also have to be honest concerning the fact that this is the issue. Very often, people, also politicians, focus on, but it's not that bad, there are positive things, while the South is objectively dying. In fact, for example, incominciano le ferie, the holidays begin. And many said, yeah, because what pisses me off is that I had to leave my hometown because there is no work where I come from. So if I am lucky, so if I have the opportunity, the only moment I can go back home is for holidays. But me leaving, it's not even a choice. It was basically an obliged choice. So I was forced to do that. And the South, whatever is remaining of the dying South, is just a place where I can go on holiday. So I understand why many people were pissed off about it. Then, of course, these hints at the religion, many people said, bro, like, it's not something concerning only the South. It's generally a concept across all over Italy, where outside of big cities, you have these importance of the religion. Also, you have churches to visit everywhere because concerning these, Italy is quite homogeneous. And then, con le luci sempre accese, or also with the ever-crowded squares. The issue, however, is this is a bit in conflict with several crises happening right now in the South. And I'm talking big crises, like crises where, due to also climate change, for example, or very old and problematic infrastructure, like electricity does not work, internet does not work, so you don't have actually the infrastructure to have the lights always on. And another criticism is for the ever-crowded squares, yes, with the tourists. However, in reality, in a normal situation, so outside of holidays, outside of this romantic view of the South, the places are empty. And in fact, we have a serious phenomenon of depopulation. So basically, where the majority of Italians are moving to concentrate themselves in certain centers, generally the big cities, mainly the big cities in the north, for example, Milan, leaving more and more without population the south. Now, what is the issue here? That if there aren't new families, if people are not living in a place, of course the state will try to move the remaining services outside of that place because there are no more users. So, for example, a place, a city, a smaller city that had a hospital or a school will see their hospital and their school closed in favor of bigger cities hosting more citizens, because of course the state will try to focus and to move resources where people are, but then the people, it is basically a destructive loop, because you have people moving from a small city to a big city, or from the south to the north, because there are no jobs. So the state is going to drain from them the resources so they can move them to the more populated place, and then people will leave the depopulated place even more because there are no services, and it is a loop where the resources are being allocated only in certain spots, so people keep leaving the disserviced areas, the areas with no infrastructure, because it is not possible living, so dying zones are going to die even faster. And I understand this critique because it is a real issue. Then we have the verse. In the first verse, we start seeing the parts in dialect. I am going to tell you the Italian version, because if my Napolitan is bad, I don't even want to try in Sicilian, because again, none of these are my dialects. I already struggle even speaking my own dialect because I'm not used to it. Imagine speaking other dialects. So, in this part, we have Delia singing, and this little part at the beginning, which is in Sicilian, in Italian would be bambini che giocano in mezzo ad una strada. And then the second part in Italian, sotto i palazzi del centro. In mezzo alla strada, gente che mangia, che beve, che piange quando risente il suo accento. La storia è uguale, Sicilia e Calabria, da Bari fino a Sorrento, giri le case di tutti i parenti perché se non vieni mi offendo. Kids playing in the middle of the street beneath the city center apartment blocks. In the middle of the street, people eating, drinking, and weeping when they hear their accent again. Of course, here the accent is also related directly to the dialect, but due to metric reasons, we couldn't have dialect because its dialetto was longer than accento. This story is the same Sicily and Calabria from Bari all the way to Sorrento. So what do you do in these cases? What is the same story everywhere? You make the rounds to visit every relative because, and it is a quote, if you don't show up, I'll be offended. Now, here, of course, don't think that all families are like that. Just like, don't worry, it's not something happening only in the south. As someone living abroad, coming in Italy every now and then to see my family, of course, to visit my family, it is quite normal to have the tour of all the relatives to say hi. And then we have the second part, caru, so dear or also child, because carusi are the children. Again, like it's not my dialect. And then what in Italian would be tutto il mondo è paese, ma il mio resta sempre al sud. Why you, which is also in Napolitan, quando scendi vuoi restare giù. Boy, when you go down, you want to stay down. So, what is the thing here? That here we have a play on words, because in Italian would be tutto il mondo è paese, ma il mio resta sempre al sud. Of course, Sud Italia, implied. And it would be literally, the world is like a big town, but mine always remains in the south. So, tutto il mondo è paese means everywhere is the same. So it's like saying the whole world is like a big town where in the end pretty much everything is the same. However, the play on words is like, yes, everywhere is the same. However, my town, my place, remains into the south. As in, yes, you say that everywhere is the same, but actually I say it's not like that. Because actually the south is different. The place I'm coming from, the place I'm from, is not the same. And so I always want to go back. And in fact, she say, when you go down, so like, because scendere, because you go in the south, you want to stay down, so you want to stay in the south. When you go to the south, you want to stay in the south. Maria Rita che stende le lenzuola che volano bianche sulle bancarelle. Qui non andiamo di fretta. Maria Rita hanging out the laundry, implied. Sheets flying white over the market stalls. We are in no rush here. Now, the issue is that the chorus plus the verse plus the next verse that you are also going to see was criticized by many people because the criticism was these are all stereotypes that are often used to criticize people from the south. Because, of course, as I always like to remind, the way you experience your own country and your own culture is personal. Just because you see the influencer depicting what you want to see, just because you have friends who live like this and are like this, just because you heard certain stories and certain costumes and certain traditions, doesn't mean that this applies homogeneously to any person belonging to that to that culture. And in fact, here the criticism was, oh yeah, of course, the children who play in the middle of the street, you go to the south and you only eat, drink, and are happy. The south is all the same. By the way, southern region, just like the northern region, hate each other just like anybody else. Or like the whole thing that if you don't visit the family, everybody gets offended, or like, oh my god, the south is the most beautiful place of them all, so when you go to the south you want to stay there. Many say fake because you have no infrastructure, so yeah, I would like to stay there, but I don't want to stay there. That's why I left. And because it is not possible living, because the south is being left to die. Same thing, oh, you stop romanticizing it, like with women like hanging out the laundry, with the markets happening, or with the fact that you have the dolce vita, the idea of dolce vita, so where you don't do anything, you lazy around and whatnot, depicting a bit people from the south as people who don't want to work, because the issue is that many people from the north used for years and still use right now to criticize the state of the south, the way people from the south behave. So you might often hear people from the north saying, oh, the south is dying, not because it is being abandoned, but because people in the south don't want to work, they are just lazy. Of course, this is not true. Like anywhere in the world you have lazy people, just like you have hard workers, and it's not correct to put the blame of the state of certain regions only on the laziness of the citizens, the inhabitants. And same thing, like when she says, oh look, there are the kids playing the middle of the streets. What kids, what children? That the majority of the families are migrating north because there are no offers, exception made for specific schools in big cities, because of course we have universities, also good universities in the south. The issue is that they are in the major centers of in the biggest cities. And already it's hard to live in big cities. Living outside of them is almost impossible. Then we have the pre-chorus and the chorus, which are exactly the same, and then we have the second verse, and here we have Levante singing. Sciuri sciuri, la vita che scorre, tra le luminarie mi accendo, Rosalia mi aspetta al balcone, mi bacia con gli occhi ridenti. Santi patroni e devoti, fuochi nel cielo sui volti, l'aria di zucchero, tutti respirano, stiamo qui ore e ore, danza l'estate sulla nostalgia, non vorrei andare più via. And here the criticism is pretty much the same. Little note here, shuri shuri is Sicilian, and it means flowers, flowers. This is specifically a reference to one of the most famous Sicilian songs, which is Shuri Shuri, and you can find several covers, but the original one is by Francesco Paolo Frontini. So, what do we have here? Life flowing by, and then amidst festive lights I come alive. So again, this idea of the continuous, perpetual festive lights, giving, yes, a beautiful image, but while actually the regions of the south are left to die. Rosalia waits for me at the balcony, she kisses me with smiling eyes. And here it is a specific reference to the grandma of Levante, but again, who is left in the south? The grandpas, the grandmas. The issue is that since people keep moving out, soon nobody is going to be left. And then we have again the reference to the religion, patron saints and devotees, fireworks implied in the sky on faces, because fuochi is fires, fuochi d'artificio is fireworks. What are the fires in the sky? The fireworks, reflecting, probably this is the image, on the faces of the people looking at them. And then the sugar air, everyone breathing in. So like the reference again to this festive mood, to to the food also. We stay here for hours on end, literally for hours and hours. And then we have these two lines working as a bridge towards the last chorus, the last pre-chorus and chorus. Summer dances upon nostalgia. I never want to leave. Like I would like never leave. So I'd wish I didn't have to leave. However, you have to, because, well, the regions are actually left to die, so you cannot stay. But here it's not said. Then, as I was saying, we have a last pre-chorus plus chorus, and the only difference in the last chorus is that torni sempre al tuo paese, so the conclusive line, you always return to your hometown, is repeated 3 times instead of 2. That said, pretty much I explain you what was the drama concerning this song, and I can see the reasons of both sides. And you might say, oh, but I mean, Silvia, it's just different points of view. Not really. What I can tell you, I really invite you to go on the YouTube video with the official video of the music song, so the song, and check the comments, because I went there just because I was curious about the drama being generated by the song, and I can tell you that the majority of comments I saw were very harsh and negative concerning this song, because I get it. Serena Brancale, Levante and Delia wanted to make a light summer song highlighting the positive aspect of the South. The issue, however, the main criticism is we really don't need further romanticization and pretend that everything is fine in the South, because it is not. We really need to start talking about the issues and the fact that this is not Disneyland for tourists, but there are people left without water, without electricity, generally without infrastructure, without healthcare, because the infrastructures like hospital and schools, as I was saying, are closing. So presenting all of these not only depicts the South as Disneyland and people from the South as lazy people living in the paradise, while you can't even make it to the end of the month because you are even lucky if you find a job. If you find a job, it's not paying enough, because of course, you are paid much less in the south than in the north, and already the average in Italy is lower than the average in the European Union. You have these plus the lack of infrastructure, plus the corruption, plus the depopulation, plus 1,000 more problems. And in fact, I saw people saying what we should really play is not this, but Vieni a ballare in Puglia by Caparezza, because it is, this is a good example of a tormentone estivo, not very often misunderstood, but pointing out the issues of the South, specifically concerning the region Apulia. If you are interested, let me know. I'm going to analyze Vieni a ballare in Puglia by Caparezza, because it is really interesting as a song, and sadly still very true even nowadays, because it's quite old, this song. So yeah, the only thing I can say is that I invite you to go under the official music video and read the comments to see what Italians, mainly Italians or from the South, think about how the South is being depicted in the song. That said, this is everything I had to say about Al mio paese by Serena Brancale, Levante and Delia. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments what you think about this song. That said, grazie everyone for watching and arrivederci.